You can't satisfy me, my wife laughed. The sound, light and airy, tinkled like the expensive crystal glasses on the table between us. She thought it was a joke, a playful jab about the vintage of the wine I'd ordered. But I heard the truth coiled beneath it, the venomous hiss of contempt she'd stopped trying to hide. I smiled, a slow, deliberate movement of my lips that didn't reach my eyes. She had no idea what was coming. She saw a husband, placid and predictable. She didn't see the architect of her imminent ruin. To understand the beauty of that moment, you have to understand the 6 months that preceded it. 6 months ago, our life was, by all external measures, perfect. We had a sprawling penthouse in the Salamanca district of Madrid, all clean lines, glass walls, and minimalist art that cost more than most people's homes. We had a villa in Marbella for the summers, a white sanctuary overlooking the Mediterranean, where the scent of jasmine and salt water hung in the air. I had built a successful software company from a single line of code in my university dorm room. I worked hard, not because I had to anymore, but because I loved building things. And I thought she loved the life I had built for us. Her name is Isabella. When I met her, she was a gallery assistant with eyes that held a universe of ambition and a smile that could disarm armies. I was captivated. I wasn't just a programmer. I was a creator, a dreamer, and in her, I thought I'd found a fellow artist of life. I showered her with everything. Not just the material things, which she accepted with practiced grace, but my time, my trust, my absolute devotion. Our early years were a blur of travel, laughter, and what I mistook for profound connection. I believed we were a team, partners carving out an enviable existence. I was the engine, and she was the beautiful, brilliant sail that caught the wind. The first tear in the fabric was almost invisible. It was a comment made at a dinner party with friends. I was explaining a new project, a complex algorithm I was proud of, and she'd placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. "Darling, don't bore them with your computer nonsense," she'd said, her laughter covering the casual cruelty. Our friends chuckled, but I felt a cold stone drop in my stomach. My work, the very foundation of our life, was now computer nonsense. Then came Javier. He entered our lives as an art consultant, a friend of one of Isabella's new, impossibly wealthy friends. He was everything I was not. He didn't build things, he curated them. He spoke in vague, impressive terms about aesthetics and provenance. He had perfectly coiffed hair, wore suits without ties, and possessed a languid confidence that set my teeth on edge. Isabella was enthralled. Suddenly, our minimalist apartment wasn't chic enough. It needed more important pieces. Javier was, of course, the only one who could source them. Her spending escalated. A sculpture for the foyer that looked like a pile of scrap metal. A painting for the living room that was just a black canvas. Each acquisition was celebrated with champagne and condescending explanations from Javier about its conceptual depth. I paid the invoices without comment, watching. I started noticing the small things, the way she'd silence her phone when I entered a room, the spa weekends with girlfriends that left her looking more exhausted than relaxed, the private jokes between her and Javier that would stop the moment I approached. The disrespect was no longer subtle. It was a constant, low hum beneath the surface of our marriage. She was performing the role of my wife, but her heart had already packed its bags and left. The confirmation, when it came, was brutal and absolute. I'd had a major server crash at work, a crisis that required all hands on deck. I told Isabella I'd be working through the night. But my team was brilliant, and we solved the issue by 2 a.m. Exhausted but relieved, I decided to go home rather than sleep on the office sofa. I let myself into the silent apartment, the cool marble under my feet absorbing all sound. I was heading for the bedroom when I heard her voice from the terrace. It was low, intimate, laced with a smugness that made the hairs on my arms stand up. He completely believed it, she was saying, followed by a soft, throaty laugh. The poor man thinks I was at a charity gala all night. There was a pause. I stood frozen in the hallway, a ghost in my own home. Don't worry, Javier. He's working. He's always working. That's what he's good for. My chest tightened, a band of ice squeezing the air from my lungs. I didn't need to hear more, but I couldn't move. Yes, the new company shares vested last week. My lawyer says the prenup is weak on post-IPO assets. We just need a few more months. Be patient, my love. Soon you and I will be in Monaco, and he'll be staring at his computer screen, wondering what happened. The world tilted. The love I felt for her, the entire edifice of our shared life, didn't just crack, it vaporized. In its place, a strange and terrible calm descended. There was no rage, no shouting. Just a profound, chilling clarity. I backed away silently, my footsteps making no sound. I went back to my car, drove to a hotel, and sat in the sterile darkness of the room until the sun came up. She thought I was a predictable machine, a walking ATM. She was about to find out how creative a machine can be when it's programmed for a single, new purpose: demolition. The next morning, I didn't go home. I went to a small, discreet office in a quieter part of Madrid. The name on the brass plaque read Enrique Vargas, Abogado. Enrique was my father's friend, a lawyer from an old, respected family, a man who understood that battles were won not with noise, but with strategy. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and eyes that had seen every form of human treachery. I told him everything, my voice even and devoid of emotion. I didn't tell him what she had said. I played him the recording I had made on my phone, standing silently in that dark hallway. Enrique listened, his face impassive. When the recording ended, he simply nodded. "I see," he said, his voice a dry rustle of old paper. "The foolishness of greed is a tale as old as time. The question is, what do you want to do, Marco?" "I want her gone," I said. "But I don't want her to leave. I want her to be excised. I want to remove her from my life so completely that the only thing left is the scar, a reminder to never be so stupid again. And I want her to get exactly what she deserves. Which, according to our prenup, is very little. I need you to make sure it holds." Enrique allowed himself a thin smile. "The prenup is solid on premarital assets. Your company, before the IPO, is yours. But she is right, her lawyer is not an idiot. They will argue that the increase in value during the marriage is community property. They will paint you as a work-obsessed husband and her as the supportive wife who managed the home, enabling your success." "She didn't manage the home," I stated flatly. "We have a housekeeper, a cook, and an assistant. She managed a social calendar." "Precisely," Enrique said, steepling his fingers. "So, we will not fight. We will prepare. We will let her believe she holds all the cards. We will give her more rope." And so began the great deception. For the next 3 months, I became the husband she accused me of being, distracted, generous, and utterly oblivious. My life split into two. By day, I was Marco, the tech CEO, running my company. By night, and in every spare moment, I was a general planning a war. Week 1 was about finance. On Enrique's advice, I established a new parent corporation in a jurisdiction with ironclad asset protection laws. I began the slow, methodical process of transferring my personal shares and liquid assets into this new entity. It was complex, legal, and completely opaque from the outside. To Isabella, the joint accounts we shared still looked healthy, flush with my salary and dividends. She didn't see the vast fortune behind them being moved, piece by piece, into a vault she didn't know existed and could never touch. Week 2 was about surveillance. Enrique hired a private investigator, a former intelligence officer named Mateo. He was discreet and unervingly effective. Within days, we had a complete picture of Isabella's life. The spa weekends were trips to a boutique hotel in Barcelona with Javier. The charity lunches were long afternoons spent in his apartment. Mateo's team provided photographs, hotel receipts, and credit card statements. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the wall I was building around her. We installed discreet, legally permissible security cameras in the common areas of our Madrid penthouse. Watching the footage felt like a violation, but I forced myself to see her laughing with him in our living room, drinking my wine, their hands intimately clasped. It wasn't about jealousy anymore, it was about evidence. It was fuel. Week 3 was the test. I told Isabella the first had to fly to San Francisco for an emergency investor meeting. "I'll be gone for a week," I said, affecting a weary tone. I'm sorry to miss your gallery opening. Her face was a perfect mask of sympathy. Don't be silly, darling. Work comes first. We all know that the moment my car left for the airport, I checked into a hotel across the city. As predicted, Javier's car was parked outside our building less than an hour later. The security footage from that week was damning. They lived in my home as if it were their own. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The emotional betrayal was complete. The evidence for the legal betrayal was now irrefutable. Throughout this period, her arrogance swelled. Believing my distraction was a sign of weakness, she became bolder. She redecorated my private study, replacing my comfortable leather chair with a severe metal thing Javier had recommended. She bought a new sports car, a whim, and simply had the dealer send me the bill. I paid it without a word. I smiled. I nodded. I played the part of the perfect fool. She and Javier would exchange knowing glances over dinner, smirks that said, "Look at this clueless man, funding our future." They thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They never realized I was the one who owned the entire board. The final act was to be staged on our 5th wedding anniversary. It was her idea, of course. A lavish dinner at Madrid's most exclusive restaurant, a place with a 6-month waiting list. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to perform the role of the adoring, successful wife one last time before she moved in for the kill. I agreed to everything. I even let her pick out my suit. "You have to look the part, darling," she'd said, holding up a ridiculously expensive silk tie. Which brings us back to that table. Her, glowing in a new couture gown, a diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist that I knew had been a gift from Javier, paid for with a supplementary card from my account. Me, in the suit she chose, a willing prop in her little drama. The champagne had been poured. The first course had been cleared. She was giddy with a sense of impending victory. She thought this dinner was the beginning of her final push for my post-IPO assets. She raised her glass. "To us," she said, her eyes glittering. "To 5 years." "To 5 years," I echoed, my voice flat. She took a delicate sip, then sighed dramatically. "This wine is good, I suppose. But the 2005 vintage is so much more complex. You just don't have the palate for it." She leaned forward, a conspiratorial whisper. "It's one of the things. You know." She paused for effect. That's when she delivered the line, the one she thought was a playful, final twist of the knife before she got everything she wanted. "You can't satisfy me," she laughed. I held her gaze and let my manufactured smile fall away, replaced by nothing. Just a calm, empty stillness. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a simple, thin manila envelope. I slid it across the polished wood of the table. It stopped just short of her bread plate. She looked at the envelope, then back at me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "What's this? Did you forget my gift?" "On the contrary," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the restaurant's murmur like a shard of glass. "I believe this is for you. Perhaps Javier can satisfy you." Her breath hitched at his name. Her perfectly painted smile froze. With trembling fingers, she opened the flap. The first thing she saw was a photograph. A grainy but clear shot of her and Javier kissing on the balcony of our Marbella villa. Taken 2 weeks ago. Her face went pale, a stark, sickly white against her makeup. She shuffled it aside, and underneath was another. The two of them laughing in my study. Then another, a hotel receipt from Barcelona, in her name, for 2 guests. Her hands were shaking now. The color had completely drained from her face. Beneath the photos was a single sheet of paper. It was a transcript of the phone call I had overheard 3 months ago. Key phrases were highlighted in yellow. "Walking ATM, prenup is weak, soon you and I will be in Monaco." Her eyes, wide with horror, darted up to meet mine. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The locks on the penthouse have been changed," I continued, my voice still quiet, conversational. "Your belongings have been packed and sent to a storage unit. The key and the address are with the concierge. The cars have been repossessed by the leasing company, which is, of course, my company. All joint credit cards and bank accounts were frozen an hour ago. You might want to think about how you're going to pay for this lovely dinner." She stared at me, her mind clearly struggling to process the sheer speed and totality of her downfall. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by raw, primal panic. Marco, no, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. Oh, I think it is, I said, placing my napkin on the table. I stood up, adjusting the suit she had picked for me. Enrique will be in touch with your lawyer. He has a full copy of all of this, plus the security footage from the last 3 months. I believe the term he used was irrefutable evidence of adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud. The prenup will be upheld to the letter. You will receive exactly what you came into this marriage with. Nothing. Tears were now streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She started to sob, a desperate, ugly sound. Please, Marco, don't do this. I love you. It was a mistake. The plea was so pathetic, so transparent, that I almost felt a flicker of pity. But I remembered her laugh on the terrace, the contempt in her voice. I remembered her calling me a fool. And the pity vanished, replaced by a cold, hard finality. I looked down at her, a broken doll in a designer dress. The biggest mistake you made, I said, was underestimating me. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The last thing I heard was the waiter, approaching her table, his voice polite but firm. Senora? Is everything all right with the bill? The unraveling was as systematic as the planning. Javier, the great art connoisseur, vanished the moment he learned the money was gone. Mateo, my investigator, later discovered he was a small-time grifter who preyed on wealthy, insecure women, wanted for fraud in 2 other countries. The important art he'd sold Isabella was practically worthless. Her friends, the ones who had whispered poison in her ear, dropped her instantly. Her calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped arriving. She was no longer the wife of a tech millionaire. She was a social pariah with a brewing scandal attached to her name. The divorce was swift. Enrique was magnificent. Her legal challenges crumbled in the face of our evidence. She was forced to sell the jewelry and designer bags I had bought her just to pay her legal fees. I saw her once, about 6 months later. I was driving through a less fashionable part of the city, and I saw her waiting at a bus stop. She looked tired and thin. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by cheap fast fashion. Our eyes met for a brief second across the traffic. I saw a flash of hatred, of shame, and of something else, a flicker of desperate longing for the life she had so carelessly thrown away. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a quiet sense of closure. I drove on. Today, my life is different. I sold my company for a figure that even I find staggering. I didn't need to work anymore, but the habit of building things is hard to break. I now fund startups run by young, hungry entrepreneurs who remind me of myself. I traded the sterile Madrid penthouse for a restored farmhouse in the countryside, where I can smell the earth after it rains. I sail. I read. I spend time with friends who knew me before the money, friends who value me for who I am, not for what I have. I learned a valuable lesson from Isabella. She taught me that trust is a currency that should be spent wisely. She taught me that some people see a partner not as a person to love, but as a resource to be exploited. And she taught me that true satisfaction comes not from what someone else can give you, but from the quiet, unshakable respect you have for yourself. She may have laughed and said I couldn't satisfy her, but in the end, I satisfied the only person who truly mattered, myself. And I did it by reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace. That is a satisfaction no amount of money can ever buy.